So obviously you have to be in a calorie deficit to have the fat loss happen, but you don't want to be in too much of a deficit because we need to have enough nutrients and calories to fuel muscle building. So what you want to do is you want to eat in a very small deficit. So I want to ask you, Adam, when you were tracking this for yourself, what was your goal deficit-wise?
You know, honestly, Sal, I actually didn't really focus so much on the deficit as much as I did like hitting my targets and not overeating.
Got it.
Right? So, because I knew through walking and me training and stuff like that I was already going to create somewhat of a deficit through that naturally because of the activity that I was doing and then the signal that I'm sending my body that it needs extra calories to build muscle. So I actually wanted to kind of hover around a maintenance more than I wanted a deficit. And what would naturally happen is as I built more muscle, my metabolism would speed up, which would take care of creating a new deficit. So I actually was more focused on actually hitting my macro targets, not actually restricting. I knew that as I built muscle, as I continued to work out in the gym and move, that I would slowly create that. And then what I was actually more watching was, is my weight starting to drop too fast? Oh, I need to add calories again.
That's great.
So it was actually like, okay, hitting a maintenance, letting the strength training build the muscle to build the metabolism. And then once the metabolism started to build enough to where I actually started to see a dip on the scale or see my weight going down, then I would actually increase calories. So I did more of this like staying at maintenance, slight surplus, maintenance, slight surplus process of actually eating, but actually was leaning out.
Yeah, so that's great. So when I say small deficit, what I was going to say is like you're aiming for like a 100-calorie deficit, which is probably going to come out to like maintenance.
Which is exactly what's probably happening.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Obviously, I was in somewhat of a deficit, but the psychological or the mindset
I'm glad you said that.
was like, hit what my body needs. This is what I've figured out is my caloric maintenance. This is how much protein and fats my body needs. I'm going to stay right in that zone or close to that as I possibly can. I know that if I'm just really getting started back into weight training, that I'm going to start lifting these weights and it's going to send a signal to build muscle. And I'm going to need that potential, maybe even surplus of calories to build. And then what will eventually happen is that I add 1-2 pounds of muscle, the metabolism will speed up. And then I'll start to see the scale go down or me leaning out. And then that was always my indicator of, time to add more calories.
That's awesome. That's why the next one is to interrupt with some small calorie surpluses. Exactly what you did, right? Where I would recommend someone do like 5 days or 6 days of a tiny deficit, which almost feels like maintenance, and then a day where you're now in a slight surplus. So 100 below, and then maybe 100 or 200 above for a day, and then back to below. And then, of course, reassessing, because as you continue to reassess, if you're doing this right and gaining muscle, because at the end of your journey, your metabolism was faster.
Oh, my God, yeah. No, I think when I started, I was eating around, I think about 2,800 and I don't know. I can't remember exactly what, but I believe it was right around 2,800 to 3,000 calories was about where my maintenance was. And then by the end of this, I was over 4,000.
Wow.
So, and that was and very slowly, man. It was almost a year later.
I'm so glad you said that because had you stayed at 2,800, it wouldn't happen.
Oh, definitely not. I definitely would not have built muscle. I mean, I might have slowly kind of leaned out, but if I did not get to a place where I was eating that many calories, I would not have also added the muscle that I had to speed the metabolism.
Was that a psychological challenge? Because I know a lot of people that go through like that surplus mode and then they interrupt it to, break it up and do like a deficit and then come right back.
It was such a mind fuck, but it also was one of the coolest experiences for me for being a better coach because I was so dialed in on where my macros needed to be that I knew I was doing the right things, right? But then there would be moments where I would get this feedback of I'd wake up in the morning and I'd look a little bloated, or I'd look like I didn't get leaner. I'd look like I got fatter overnight, or what seemed to be, it felt like overnight. And then I'd actually get on the scale and maybe even see the scale had gone up a pound or two.
Wow.
And so it really challenged that, oh my God, do I know what I'm doing? Am I eating appropriate to what I'm training like? And, should I cut? And what I do is like, no, I have to trust the process. I have to know that I've already calculated all this out. I'm in the right place. And then it would be like 2 or 3 days later, all of a sudden you'd see that come out. And what it was my body just holding on to water. And that little bit of holding on to water while you're also trying to lean out is such a mind fuck. And so it really opened my eyes for from a coaching perspective of God, how often does this happen to our people?
Oh yeah.
How often do you
abandon it because of those signals?
Yes. Right? And you know what? When you're in that position, this is from like the client's perspective, I don't care how smart your trainer is or how much you trust them. There's nothing they can say to you to make you feel different about what you see. Because I knew what I was doing, knew it was right, but would see it and it still messed with me because I'm going like, no, I'm looking at this mirror right now and I know what I look like yesterday and I look worse today. Mm-hmm. Yet I trained, I ate the way I was supposed to, but I woke up. And so, you know, your body's ability to retain and hold water and to look a little bit different day to day can be very deceiving for even the experienced person, much less the average person who's going through this.
I like that. Yeah. So I'm so glad you said that. So basically you're going for a small deficit most of the time, and every once in a while you'll do a small surplus. But the key here is it's small. There's nothing massive in either direction. Now, along those lines, you definitely want to eat a very high protein diet. 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, or even a little more. Yeah. Studies are pretty clear on this. When people are in a calorie deficit, but their protein intake is high, even if they don't strength train, they lose less muscle. If they strength train, they end up building more muscle. So the protein aspect is going to be very, very important. So take your body weight and say, okay, that's my goal to hit that many grams of protein per day. And that'll make a huge difference. Of all the macronutrients, that one makes the biggest difference.
Well, this is so important, right? So that if let's say I'm hitting my calorie goal in order to quote unquote build muscle, but my protein take is so low, my body might not, right?
That's right.
I mean, like, so I could literally, let's say my number is, 2,900 calories is what I need to consume a day. And I hit my 2,900, but my protein's at 30 grams or 50 grams. The likelihood that the extra weight that my body potentially holds on to or adds is not going to be,
that's right.
It's not going to be muscle because I'm not giving it the right macronutrients in order for it to adapt and build muscle. But I am giving it a surplus of calories. So those actual additional calories may end up getting stored as body fat. Is that right?
That's it. Yeah. Muscle, your muscles are made up of amino acids. Now there's the fat and carbohydrates play a role because it's more complex than what I'm saying. But this is pretty clear. This is one of those things with diet, because diet can be murky, but this is very clear in diet that a high protein intake in a calorie deficit is phenomenal for muscle. And since we're talking about building muscle while burning body fat, like you absolutely have to do this to really make this a reality, again, because it's so challenging. The next thing is we're going to talk about our carbs. Carb cycling can be really valuable during this process. Now, it's mainly because when you're looking at your total calories, especially if you're trying to be in a small deficit, calories are made up of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Well, proteins and fats are essential, meaning you need to have a certain amount of each just to thrive and survive. Carbohydrates are not essential. So when you're cutting calories, it's easier to take them from carbs because you're not going to take it away from, you're not taking away anything your body absolutely needs like you would from fat and proteins. Now, what is carb cycling? Carb cycling is the process of feeding yourself your carbohydrates around your workouts, for example, to fuel your workouts.
Usable energy.
Yeah, this is how I would like to do it, right? I like to eat my carbohydrates a couple hours before my workout so I have the fuel during the workout to fuel the strength building, muscle building process. And then maybe the rest of the day, my carbohydrates are lower because my calories are lower overall. That's one of the main ways.
So when I did this, the way it ended up working out was like my medium carb day was basically caloric maintenance. My low carb day was a deficit. And then my high carb day was a slight surplus.
So proteins and fats are almost the same.
That's right. Proteins and fats are the same. Carbs is what I manipulated. The carbohydrates also was what had me undulate my calories. Mm-hmm. And so I found that's another reason why I really liked it. It was an easy way to actually do that, and just by following these macros. Mm-hmm. And I'd have these days where I'd get the carb surplus. Obviously love those days because I'm eating additional calories. That would fuel these great workouts. I also tried and scheduled the big like leg day training stuff that I would do right around that. So I had this extra energy from it that would put me in the surplus. Hopefully my body is building and adding muscle from the surplus of calories. Then I go back down to a maintenance day, and then I'd have this low. And I actually, and there's different ways to carb cycle. I played with all of them. I used to run 2 low days, a medium day, and then a high day. So that's kind of like what mine ended up looking like.
Well, I like this too with the manipulating the carbs specifically, because then on the low days too, you're still like satiated when you are high protein.
Yeah.
And that for me, it was like so much more manageable. My hunger signal didn't get too loud and I wasn't fighting that as much.
Totally.